Alright, hello photography people. What I'm going to show you is hopefully a less confusing version of the multiplicity tutorials. So I took a couple of pictures to use for this example. Now sometimes I forget that you guys are just photography students and I forget to tell you little details on ways to make your pictures better. For example, with this multiplicity project, I did say that you should always use a tripod. One of the tips that I could have given you was to make your pictures less movable or to avoid having gaps in your pictures in between the multiplicity pictures. You can use the timer on your tripod to help out with that. By that I mean this. If you look where I have the Ninja Turtle in this picture, close to the Bills football helmet here. When I move over to the next picture, you're going to notice a slight movement in this helmet. Also, with the wicker basket thing in the background here, you're going to notice a slight movement here. This distance between the tape on the wall and this branch is going to close when I click over to the next picture. Just like that. So even though my Ninja Turtle moved to the center here, I still don't like having those differences in the pictures. Because when I try to edit this with the multiplicity in Photoshop, it's going to make things harder for me. So that is one of the things that I always tell you to take more pictures. The more pictures you take, the easier things become for you. So taking into account that I didn't give you all of the tips that maybe I should have, I'm going to make these projects a little bit easier. So instead of requiring 5 different positions for your multiplicity pictures, I'm only going to require you to have at least 3. You can have more if you'd like, but please be careful where you position your people. If they're overlapping, it's going to make it harder for you to edit. So please make it easier on yourself and position them in spots where they weren't overlapping in the previous picture. Alright, so I'm going to use these 3 pictures for my Ninja Turtle part here, and I'm going to open these up in Photoshop. If you don't remember how to get to Photoshop, since we haven't used it in a while, click on your Start button, go to All Programs, Adobe Design Premium CS5, and Adobe Photoshop CS5 64-bit. When Photoshop opens, what you need to do is go to File, Scripts, and Load Files into Stack. When this opens up, click on Browse, and then you need to find your pictures. This is from our computer art midterm, so let me go over to my photography folder. Hopefully it's in your home drive and you made a folder for it, so you can find it nice and easy. Photography, multiplicity, and here are my Ninja Turtle pictures. I'm going to make them bigger so I make sure I have the right ones. And I'm doing this one, and this one. So once you hit OK and you have multiple pictures here, click OK in this menu, and it will load all of your pictures into one stack. So now I have my 3 pictures. If I click on these eyeball icons, I can hide the other pictures, and I can bring them back just so you can see. So now what you need to do is you need to add a layer mask. The layer mask button is right down here. It is the circle inside of the rectangle. When I highlight it, it says Add Layer Mask. So if I add a layer mask to that picture, and then I add a layer mask to this picture. I could add one here, but you don't need to. You don't have to edit the last picture. You only need to edit these first 2, if you have 3 pictures. What I'm going to do now is I need to have my paintbrush selected, which is this tool right here, and now I'm going to change my brush size. So if I come up here, I want this solid circle one. This is a hard edge brush. So if I double click on that, right now my brush size is kind of small. I can use the bracket keys on my keyboard to change the size. The right bracket key will make it bigger, the left bracket key will make it smaller. You could also change the size in this menu here with the slider, but the bracket keys to me are a little bit easier. So I'm just going to go ahead and double click back on that. So all I am doing for this first picture is I need to make sure I have the layer mask selected. So the layer mask is this little white box here. If you do not see this dotted line around the outside of the layer mask, then it is not selected. If I have this selected here, it's not going to work. So I need to make sure my layer mask is selected. The next thing I need to do is make sure these 2 colored boxes here are white and black. If they're not white and black, click on the box, and your white is all the way in the top left corner. Click OK, and then click on the other box. Black is at the bottom left corner. Click OK. And now I have my white and black boxes. This little arrow in between the two boxes will change the foreground and background color. See how it says switch foreground and background colors? You could also press X on your keyboard to do that as well. If I click X on my keyboard, it changes the colors for me. Now, since this layer mask is all white, I want black for my brush, so black is the foreground color now. With my paintbrush, all I have to do is paint over where my Ninja Turtle or the subject of my picture is. So if it's a person, you would paint over that person. Now, you do see a little bit of a difference in the wicker basket part, but what I'm going to do for now is just leave it. So I have my Ninja Turtle completely gone. The next step is I'm going to inverse these colors. So I'm going to hit Control and hold it down on my keyboard and press I, and it inverses the colors. So it brings my Ninja Turtle back in, and then it brings the next one that I have to erase in the layer mask. Now you can still see these adjustments didn't go well. You can zoom in on your picture by holding down Control and pressing plus. And if I look here, see, it doesn't line up anymore. Now if I really want to, I can play around and kind of try to adjust this a little more to one part where it maybe looks a little bit better by hitting the X button, changing my brush size, and finding kind of like a medium in between them. So maybe I'll just leave it like that. Get rid of a little bit more around his leg, and I'm just going to leave it like that. So it's not perfectly believable, but it maybe looks a little bit better than it did before. Alright, so before I move on to the next Ninja Turtle, I'm going to zoom out. So again, if I hold down Control and press the minus button on my keyboard, I will zoom back out. Okay, so now I need to erase this guy here. So I'm going to go ahead and actually zoom in a little bit and scroll over, and I can start erasing him. But I clicked on my mouse and nothing happened. Why? Because I did not have this layer mask selected. So when I go back to this layer mask, I need to click on that white box, and my foreground color is black, so now I can start erasing him. This one looks like it lines up a little bit better with the background. Now, once I get into the pumpkin stem there, I'm expecting a little bit of a movement since I had to add the Ninja Turtle to the actual pumpkin, but looks like it's not too bad. And that is something that will remedy itself if you use the timer on your camera when you're taking these pictures. So again, like I said, that was one of the tips that I didn't tell you. So if you use the timer and you set your timer to 2 seconds or 5 seconds and then just press the button on your picture, your camera won't shake from you pressing down the button because it will reset itself before it takes the picture. Okay, so my Ninja Turtle there is gone. And now again, I'm going to inverse my layer mask. So hold down Control, press I, and he's back. And when I zoom out, my last one is right there on the ground. So here's my 3 different poses with my Ninja Turtle, and that's my finished product. So this was extremely zoomed in because my subjects were really small. When you do your pictures, you should have your camera zoomed out more because if you're using real life people, they're much bigger in scale. Again, please do not overlap your pictures if you can help it. It's going to be harder for you to edit if your subjects are overlapping, so try to spread them out. When you are finished, go to File, Save As, change it from a Photoshop format to a JPEG format, and then name it something that you will recognize, like Multiplicity 1, Multiplicity Final, whatever you want to call it. Multiplicity Midterm, I have a lot of different examples, so I have a lot of files on here, so I call it Multiplicity Final. That'll be fine. It's in my Multiplicity folder, hit Save, hit OK, and then you're done. You can upload this picture to Google Classroom and move on to your next one.